Okay, well, hello everyone. I know I don't need to introduce myself to those of you who are on the call because you all know me, but I'm going to anyway, just because I really like saying my new name. So I'm Madeline Rivetta of Bright Light NLP. Welcome to the Grapevine. Those of you on live, as I say, you've all been before, but if there's people watching on the replay, this is a monthly dose of NLP as a practice group, and it's suitable both for beginners who are new to NLP and those who have got some NLP experience, because what I'll do is introduce a topic in a really easily accessible way, so that if it's not something you've done before, I'll lay it out in really simple bite-sized steps, and if it is something you've done before, it'll be a bit of a refresher and hopefully give you some new ideas. But the main focus is on practice, both practicing some NLP skills and the opportunity to be on the receiving end of some coaching. And tonight's topic is parts of you. So in a moment, I'm just going to share my screen. The slides aren't important, so if you can't see them, don't worry about it. But I will share my screen just so there's a few reminders and visuals for us. Okay, so it's about parts of you. And to get started tonight, what we're going to cover is a little bit of a welcome. There's only a few of us on the call, so we will do introductions. When there's larger numbers, I tend to skip that bit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about parts, what they are, how they get created, how they show up in our lives. How do you know you've got parts? And where and when that might be a problem or might be a benefit. And I'm going to set up a couple of practical exercises that I'm going to discuss and explain to you. And the important bit is then give you the chance to actually do a practical exercise, excuse me. One or other. We might have time for both because we're quite a small group, or whichever one you want to practice. And after the practical part, we'll come back together for a bit of a reflection and close for the evening. So that's the plan. Quick, just before we do the introductions, one of the inspirations for tonight is a Disney film or Pixar film that some of you might have seen called Inside Out. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend you'll get it maybe on Netflix or Amazon or something, or get the opportunity to see it. It's an absolutely fantastic little animation. For those of you who are more of my generation, it's along a similar theme to a cartoon strip in the Beezer called Numbskulls that some people might remember. And in both Numbskulls and in Inside Out, the premise was that there are little people living inside our head, and each of those people has a different characteristic that make up parts of you. And so in this graphic, which is the film poster, you'll see the 5 little people that live inside this little girl's head. If I just take the red one on the left, he's called Anger. And we all probably recognize having a bit of anger living inside our head. And sometimes it almost feels like it has its own personality. So it's a really good illustration of parts of you. When the parts are getting along in this poster, you'll see they're all at a kind of, control console. And when they're all getting along and all playing their part, everything's fine. But if they fall out or if one of them dominates, then there can be some conflict. And I'm sure you'll recognize that premise. It makes a really good film or a great cartoon strip in the case of Numbskulls, which was a similar thing. Little people who live inside your head. The one I always used to love was there were 2 little people in the cartoon head who had levers that would open and close your eyelids. And you know those times when you feel like you're dropping off, and your eyes are closing. In the cartoon, the little person with the lever for closing your eyelids just dropped his lever. And I was just thinking, yeah, I recognize that when I fall asleep. That's what it feels like. Someone else is closing my eyelids. I'm making people yawn. Look at that. Talking about sleep. So that's the kind of the premise. That's a little bit of what I'm basing it on. If we can take a moment just to introduce ourselves very quickly, just say who you are, and just based on the tiny little snippet I've given you so far, what is one of the characters that lives inside your head? That's my question for you. There might be a lot, but what's one? Who'd like to go first? Just really, really briefly, who are you and what's one of the little characters that lives inside your head? Go on, Maria.
Yeah, Maria Hamilton. Been with Madeline for quite a while now, trained as an NLP practitioner. In terms of one of the things going on in my head, I suppose one of the parts could be anticipation, uncertainty.
I love it. Yeah, both good. Very good. Nice to see you, Maria.
Thanks.
Brian, what about you?
Okay, folks, I'm Brian Shanks. I'm from Kintore in Aberdeenshire. I was on Madeline's NLP Master Prac last year. I've been involved in NLP for about the past 10 years. In terms of parts, yeah, I've had interestingly, I've had the odd anger of late, anger or frustration. Had a bit of a flip moment last Thursday, actually. I lost the plot, and that's not like me, but I was listening to the radio this morning, and it was ex-Metropolitan Police officer who's set up on a farm, and she has a caravan that she has bought furniture and stuff for, but she encourages people to come along for 15 minutes and they pay to wreck the caravan. It's a way of getting anger out in the open. Not been that bad, but yeah, that one's popping up a wee bit of late.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. What about you, Emma?
Well, I'm Emma Morrison and I live in Aberdeen, and just recently I redid the diploma with Madeline over lockdown, so I very much enjoyed that. But when we think about this, the way I'm relating more to it is from my Buddhist practice, because we have something called the 10 worlds, which is 10 different life states, which we can be in any one of them at any point, and they are all together, so you can be in more than one. But when I started practicing about 12 years ago, the anger life state was very strong in me. And after having practiced for a year, I suddenly realized I wasn't like that at all anymore. It had just gone.
Super.
So, yeah.
Brilliant.
This brings up in me, this topic.
That's a good one. Fabulous. That's lovely. Thank you. So we've introduced ourselves with what are some of the parts of us. I love that Emma shared about the Buddhist life states and her observation that in the past she might have lived in the anger life state for a while, but then feels like it's gone. One of the things that from an NLP or even from a neuroscience point of view is that the parts of us that exist, even when they aren't showing up, we might have the capacity. So one of the really self-compassionate things to do is, even if you recognize that anger has gone in you or anger isn't normally there, you still have that capacity, because sometimes it's appropriate to feel justifiable anger. So even when parts have names that we might call negative, and I'm going to use inverted commas on that, they have a positive intention. By positive, I don't necessarily mean good, but they're there for a justifiable or for a reasonable purpose. So a lot of when we look at parts, often what we're looking for is balance. You know, no anger at all might be a lovely state to be in, but justifiable anger sometimes is appropriate. It motivates us to, for example, put right injustices. Unbalanced anger is obviously toxic. So sometimes we'll be looking, a bit later on, we'll be looking at balance between parts as well.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to fight for social justice if we didn't have that within us. It's so important.
Absolutely. Exactly. And each of the parts inside of us, or the parts of us, they each fulfill a role, and they each have an intention towards the whole of you, like a positive intention towards you, that they're there for a purpose. But it does sometimes feel like they're not always agreeing with each other, or they might be conflicting with each other. For example, one part of you might say, I know that smoking kills, but another part of you says, and I want to go on smoking. And these two can be completely at odds, and you can live with complete incongruity, and that's a function of how parts works, because each of them acts on its own, entirely congruent with itself, but not necessarily congruent with another part of you. It's one of the ways that we can hold cognitive dissonance. For example, listening to evidence for one thing, but acting in an opposite way. That would be a function of parts as well. Because each of these parts also needs to express itself. Suppressing it isn't particularly helpful. That can lead to conflict as well. And sometimes they need to interact and to negotiate with each other to look for reconciliation. So it can sometimes feel like there's, you know, loads and loads of different voices at odds with each other. And in fact, there's quite a well-known in-joke in NLP, which is what's the difference between a schizophrenics and the rest of us? And the schizophrenics own up to the voices in their head. I've always liked that. You know, we all have them. We all have lots of different parts of us with different personalities. So what I'm going to do now is just take a look at where some of the parts come from, how you might identify them. What I'm going to do is invite you, if you've got pencil and paper with you, you might want to jot a few thoughts down or just hold it in your head. But I'm going to invite you, as I go through some of the types of parts, just to identify if any of them resonate for you. And if you notice a part within yourself, give it a name and jot it down with what name you've given it. So I'm going to start with the same logic as the film of Inside Out, in that the little girl called Riley, she had 5 parts that were characters in the film, and they were characterized by 5 of her main emotions: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. Those were the 4 characters in that film, and how, you know, that was enough to make a really good film. In our brains, there are lots more. So each of those, you know, the part of me that expresses joy has different characteristics from the part of me that expresses disgust, for example. There are lots of other parts of you that could be identified by their emotions or by their attributes of you. So does anyone have any that spring to mind for yourself, other parts that instantly you want, that you identify with?
Don't know. Well, it's just going back, Madeline, to the other ones I've said: uncertainty, anticipation. But obviously, for me, I've also figured out frustration.
Yes.
As well. I'm really frustrated because I'm in a process where I'm not in control at the moment.
Yeah. And that will be a part of you.
Yeah.
Good.
So
yeah, perfect.
Just those are quite strong, really. At the moment.
Yeah, frustration's a good one that Maria comes up with there, Madeline. I think the situation we find ourselves in, certainly over the last 6 months and now, is one of we're going in a particular direction and then all of a sudden it changes.
Yes.
So that element of frustration it's like 2 steps forward and 6 steps back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Related to that, I've identified a part that crops up with a couple of very, very dear friends, the part of me that loves them and the part of me that is so at odds with their beliefs around the current situation. Mm-hmm. And so different that it's really difficult. Part of me, I absolutely love them to bits, but I don't want to spend time with them because their approach to COVID is so different from mine. And it feels like 2 parts of me at war. And the love is very strong, but the other feeling is strong as well. So yeah, absolutely, really good examples, all of those. With the parts of you that are emotions, they will really colour your experiences, for example, growing up, or how you remember things as well, which emotion predominates. So there's all sorts of influences that the emotional parts of you can have. But there's another kind of part, which is like the different roles that you play. And by roles, I mean both the sort of the different hats you wear, like parent, child, manager, but also the roles as in the way that you behave. So the part of you that can be a conformist and the part of you that can be a rebel. As I was going through this, I was thinking about that song, and I can't remember all of it, but it goes, I'm a lover, I'm a fighter, I'm a midnight. No, I'm a lover, I'm a joker, I can't remember. Do you know the one I mean? I'm a midnight.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
All the different things. And just thinking this is, all of those selves, if you like, all the different selves of you, the different roles that you play. A lot of people can identify with this one because it's so common to hear people say, there's a work me and a home me. Or I'm different when I'm with my family than when I'm with my friends. So you could say that each of those is a part of you. It's a different facet that you present to the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, any roles that you play coming to mind instantly? Yes, Maria.
Well, as a parent, as a worker, as a parent sort of worker, just in terms of the roles that I'm playing in the work that I'm doing at the moment. And that's causing a bit of friction because in some of them I've been as a supporter to bring some people on board, and now we're forming a sort of core group to take this organisation to the next stage. It's now, I think that's causing friction because that person is now, I don't mean on the same level, but there's a sort of friction in terms of the roles that we played and some of the stuff they were doing for me and, supporting me with. And now there's a role that I've been asked to do. There's a role that they've been asked to do. There's a crossover there. It's not clear. Nothing's clear. And there's sort of friction.
So you might be playing different roles like leader, but also kind of peacekeeper almost, and supporter, so you might be playing a number of different roles in order to make that relationship work or to make that function happen. And it's interesting, if you take something like leader or parent, when we think about it in terms of part, it doesn't have to be a literally true thing. So you might not actually be the leader, but there might be a part of you that is leader. You don't have to literally be a parent, but you still might have a parenting part. For example, those of us that aren't actual parents can have a parenting part that comes to play. For example, if you see someone in pain, the parenting part of you might emerge in order to nurture, care, tend, and so on. So in parts, it doesn't have to match the kind of the actual labels we wear. It's some inner driver that we're talking about.
Interesting enough, though, if there's a role that you have to play because you've been asked to play it, it's then how does that interact with other people that have a problem with you playing that part?
So one of the things that I would just say for context, parts are internal to you. And for the purpose of tonight, we're not looking at the interaction with other people. We're looking at the internal interaction. It is, you're absolutely right. It's a very valid one, a very, very valid question. But for the scope of the amount of time we've got, it's beyond from a time point of view. But what I will suggest you do, when you're thinking about it for you, Maria, is as well as asking yourself, how does this part interact with other people? I think the next slide I'm about to say will be a fresh way of looking at what you've just said there. Okay, so or no, well, no, not the next slide, the next. So in 2 slides time, when we look at projection, there'll be something very relevant to you.
Okay.
So the next type of part are the ones that often have like an alter ego, and it's really interesting that our everyday language often shows that up. We say things like, part of me wants to do X, but part of me wants to do Y. We say that in everyday language. Part of me knows that smoking kills, but part of me wants to go on smoking. Part of me knows that drinking lots of red wine isn't good for me, but part of me loves to party on a Friday night, and so on. Or on the one hand, I want to do ABC, but on the other hand, I really want to do XYZ. Or my head says this and my heart says that. Or the graphic I've got here, that classic, I've got an angel whispering this in one ear and a devil whispering that in the other. They're all examples of the kind of either or part, but both of them can exist at the same time inside of us. We can have both of those desires going on, and it's one of the reasons why we experience inner conflict or inner dilemma. It's like there are two little selves inside disagreeing with each other. So I love this picture which I found that I think illustrates that really well. Do any of you do any contrasting or equal and opposite parts that you have spring to mind for you? A kind of on the one hand this, but on the other hand that?
Probably happens quite a lot, Madeline, but I suppose I learned decision-making, lifetime of experience, you end up making those decisions a wee bit easier than perhaps others would.
Yes.
Less experience.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. And sometimes you have the part of you that says, well, the mature, experienced adult me knows that this would be the best answer. But the part of me that is a little child that just couldn't care less wants to do the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. And so even with experience, we can still have conflicting parts inside of us.
Yeah.
Perfect. The last source of parts that I'm going to quickly talk about, there are lots of others as well. These are some examples. Parts are often projections. So in other words, characteristics that you see in other people. And I know, Maria, this isn't what you said, but you could use this to apply to your question of how do other people react to you. Don't think about them, think about yourself. When I see someone else and their characteristics, the question I look inside myself and say, where is that person's characteristic a part of me? So I'm going to give a few examples. If you think about somebody you admire, what specifically do you admire about them? Because that characteristic is a hidden part within you. We call it hidden or shadow, because the fact that you're projecting it onto someone else is probably because you don't really know it's inside of you. You can do the same with people that you envy. Think about somebody you envy or you're jealous of, or you think, oh, I wish I could do that. Like, say, a talented artist, you think, oh, I wish I could paint like that. Or a successful business person, oh my goodness, I wish I could grow my business that way, or whatever it is. What specifically do you envy about them? Because that characteristic exists within you as a part. And thirdly, the people that you loathe or hate or even just dislike, or that trigger you, that wind you up, what specifically do you dislike about them? Because that characteristic is also a part of you. Like, oh, I hate the way that person is so unreliable. That characteristic of unreliable is within you. It's a hidden part or a shadow part, maybe one that you don't want to or have not acknowledged, but nonetheless, using the NLP presupposition that if you can spot it, you've got it, or perception is projection. If you can see it in someone else, it means it must exist within you. This particular approach, so if somebody's doing something really annoying, instead of getting cross with them, ask yourself, where do I do that? You know, where is that behavior true about me? And a really, really useful self-development process is to uncover these hidden or shadow parts, to explore them, to understand them, to bring them out into the light and to reconcile them. Because actually when you heal them within yourself, because we can't change other people, we can only change ourselves. When you heal them within yourself, they show up differently in other people because you are projecting it to the outside world. And healing your shadow parts is something I'll be covering more of in my new bite-size NLP series that's starting in October. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. So my question to you now is, who do you admire or envy or loathe? And what is it about them specifically that then is a part of you? Anything coming to mind about that one?
I wouldn't use the term loathe, Madeline, but I've an issue at the moment with a personal friend of mine, and we've organised 3 or 4 times to play golf over the last few weeks. And I've actually broken time in my diary for it to happen.
Yeah.
And then I get either last minute or the day before saying, no, I'm sorry, I've got to work tomorrow. Can you make it next Thursday? So I make the effort to make next Thursday. And then come Wednesday, the terms have changed again.
Yeah.
So I got to yesterday because the latest one was, well, I can't manage today, but I can manage next Friday. So I ain't going back. I'm just not going to answer it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get myself into the position where for a 4th time, I'm going to get myself all set up to play and then it doesn't happen.
So the question then is to turn the light into your shadow. Where is the part of you that can let other people down because you've put your own plans or requirements first? Do you see what I'm saying? Or whatever the aspect is that you dislike about your friend, where in you do you have, not saying you do it, but that you have the capacity to do that?
Yeah, I would have said there maybe had been a time that I possibly would have put something before another, but I think over time I've become more reliable in that regard. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things I notice is things, and I'm not saying this is about you, but it might be, for example, I had a friend who would never, ever let a business colleague down if they booked an appointment, but they might go home and say to their kids, oh, I'm not going to be able to spend Saturday with you because I've got to work, which is just a flip side of the same thing. And so it's like, not recognizing there's a part, this colleague of mine wouldn't recognize that he had a part that would let people down, even though he sometimes went home and said to his children, I won't spend Saturday with you because I've got to work. And you're going, oh, I'm not letting them down, I've got a commitment. And it's really interesting how your shadow parts show up in different places. They show up with different behaviors, because we say, a part of me says that's completely justifiable. I'm sure he believed that was absolutely the right thing to do. Work was really important to provide for his children, and at the same time his children wanted to spend Saturday with him. So it's a really interesting way of looking for different parts of yourself, is to look at characteristics in other people, both the good and the bad, the likable and the unlikable characteristics. It's about wholeness, isn't it? Always, there's always parts of us in the light and parts of us in the shadow, and that's normal. That's like the moon. We wouldn't be complete if we didn't have our shadow. Perfect. So a quick word. I know on the next slide there's an awful lot of words on the slide, and that was a mistake. They were my own notes, but I forgot to change the slide, but I'll put it up anyway. A couple of the things that I wanted to mention about a part of you, any part that you've identified, it acts almost as a complete intelligent being on its own. It has a complete, so the part of you that is anger let's say, or the part of you that is frustration, is absolutely complete and congruent in its own right. It has an intelligence in its own right. It can make choices and decisions in its own right based on its values and drivers. If you've studied NLP and you're familiar with the Robert Dilts neurological levels pyramid, all the levels from environment, so the environment that shows up when you are angry, the behavior of anger, the skills and capabilities of anger, the values and beliefs of anger, and the identity of anger and the higher purpose are all completely congruent for that part. Then a different part of you will have a complete congruence of its own. So they always have got a positive higher intention, which is a positive intention towards you, the whole, you know, the host, if you like. That part will always protect its congruent behavior. So one of the reasons why it can be very hard to let go of an unhelpful part, because it is protecting its behavior. Sometimes it will repress it. So the part of you that is, let's say, anger, that still exists, can be repressed, but it's still congruent with the behavior of anger. But on the flip side, that part could be at odds with one or more other parts that you have. And that's the source of inner conflict when, you know, the example I often give, the part of you that knows that smoking kills, but the part of you that goes on smoking, individually, they're completely congruent, you know, with themselves, but you put them next to each other and they are incongruent. And that is the source of inner conflict. Most parts will have an opposite number. So the opposite of fear is love, for example. The opposite of chaos might be peace. But they all have the same highest intention, which is some good intention towards you, towards the host or the whole. So they're basically fully functioning, which is why the metaphor of little people inside your head from the Numbskulls cartoon or the Inside Out cartoon is so accurate, because they basically do behave like lots of little individual personalities. No wonder it can be chaos inside here sometimes. So, a couple of exercises I want to introduce you to. You may well have done something like this before, but I think I'll be offering a slightly different spin, or it might be brand new to you. In both cases, there is a worksheet in the learning portal. Probably the best bet is I'll talk through both the exercises, and as you listen to them, you can choose which one you'd like to practice, you know, for yourself. And for now, and then just download the one that you're going to practice. But the other one's there for you to work through at your own pace. Is that okay?
Are you going to put the links for the download in the chat, Madeline?
No, they're in the learning portal, Maria, where you signed on to get your Zoom code. They're in the same module of the learning portal. They're all already there.
Oh, so you want us to download it in a minute from there?
Yes.
All right.
You know where I mean. You can open up another browser window and you'll find it.
All right. Okay. I'll have a look in a minute.
Yeah, it seems to have worked. It's what we've done the last couple of grapevines, and it seems to have worked quite well.
Okay.
Yeah. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll drop you a link.
Yeah.
But as I say, it's already there.
Right.
So, the first one is a tool, or a version of a tool, devised by a lady called Virginia Satir, she's the therapist from whom the founders of NLP modelled the whole idea of parts in the first place. She's not the only person to have invented parts. Lots of people did, but the parts party is hers. And it's a party inside your head where you can invite as many parts as you like, but my suggestion for tonight, again, mainly because of time, is to pick 3 or 4 of your parts. The idea being to invite them to a party and just notice how each of them behaves. How do they behave on their own? How do they behave to each other? What roles do they play? And quite often when you do this exercise and you sort of mentally invite, okay, I'm going to invite anger, I'm going to invite intolerance is one that's showing up in my shadow at the moment. So the example being with friends that have very different beliefs to me, that sense of intolerance. So I might invite intolerance. I might invite love, because I think that's at odds at the moment with intolerance. And I might invite patience, which I think is another part of me that needs expressing. So those might be 4 parts that I would invite. And already in my head, I'm sort of picturing these 4 characters. They look different to each other. They're each playing a different role. At the moment, patience is hanging back. Love is pouring the drinks for everybody. Intolerance is already tutting that there isn't enough Coke or red wine or whatever it is she drinks, you know. Anger is getting frustrated. So now in my head, peace is coming along and saying, calm down, everyone. Let's all be nice. Let's all be friends. And it's amazing how quickly you can create a whole scenario in your head. Couple of ways when you do this in the practice, in the worksheet that's downloadable. So if you'd like to hold a parts party in your head, ask your partner, because we're an even number, we'll do it in pairs. Ask your partner to find the worksheet for the parts party, and there's just some trigger questions. And you can just do it in your head or jot down your answers to the questions, whatever, or do it out loud, whatever works for you. So that's the first one. And the idea being just to get to know some of your parts and allow them to express themselves. So that's the outcome. The goal is to get to know different sides of yourself, which is why it's a good idea to invite at least 1 or 2 of your more shadow or hidden parts, the ones that you're less comfortable with, because it's really, you know, self-knowledge is so valuable. The second exercise I'm going to suggest, a classic NLP one, a dialogue between 2 parts. Some of you might have heard of the parts integration process, where you actually try to integrate 2 parts and make them into one whole. For tonight, for the purpose of practice, I always recommend that the outcome should simply be a dialogue. You don't have to aim for integration, just getting your parts, 2 parts. This is specifically 2 parts, where the party is as many as you like. The dialogue is specifically choose 2 that are in conflict. So this would be a great one to choose if you know you've got an inner dilemma or an inner conflict, because again, working with a partner, the partner will use the worksheet. So even if you've never done this process before, you can use the worksheet as a script. You can literally just read the questions in turn, and you will help your partner to resolve, to have their dialogue. And roughly speaking, what the person coaching will do is invite you to bring your 2 conflicting parts out and imagine that they're sitting in your 2 hands, part A and part B, and then we'll guide you through some questions that each one can ask the other to get a dialogue going, so that they can at least begin to show acceptance of one another and possibly even compromise or reconciliation. But the dialogue is the important thing. What I would say, really important, if you're going to be doing this one, if you're talking to parts that are out in your hands, when you've finished, always bring them back into your body, reintegrate them. It can feel really weird if you're left with parts of you, so even if it's only in your imagination, but outside of you, you want to reintegrate. That's really important. Okay, so parts party, if you want to just get to know a few of your parts and explore and find out who they are, get to know them. The dialogue, if there's a specific inner conflict or dilemma where you'd like 2 specific conflicting parts to have a chat with each other. Have you thought about which one you'd like to practice?
At this point, the participants went into breakout rooms to work through the 2 exercises that I've just described. So you might like to pause the video at this point so that you can do it for yourself. You'll find the downloadable materials wherever you found this this video. And when you've worked through them, just come back and watch the rest of the video.
I hope you enjoyed your breakout. So Maria and I had a fantastic, very wide-ranging conversation. But I just ask each of you, what have been the key things you took away? Is there anything that arose in your breakout room? Anything you'd like to discuss? Any learning points or any questions that you'd like to share? Brian and Emma, would you like to go first?
Is Emma there? I'll let Emma have a say.
Okay.
Well, this is a bit of a strange subject for me, because I don't feel like there's lots of disparate things going on in my head. I feel like quite integrated. But at my party, I had frustration, compassion, anger, and courage, and it was nice to see how they could work together, because courage could help anger go forward to fight for social justice, for instance, or to help someone compassionately and stuff like that. So it was nice to see it.
Yeah. I love that. Brilliant.
So I had used frustration and tolerance in the context of multiple IT experiences.
Okay.
And it just got to me last week. I just had enough. But I think what I did realise at the end, it was quite an interesting experience, that when I brought the parts together and took them back into the equation, I almost got this sense of inner warmth in me around the kind of thing you would get if you'd managed to reach an agreement on something.
Yes. That's lovely. Yeah, so obviously, so the two parts reached a similar wavelength, I guess, and it can. It's wonderful. One of the things, so I think it might have been you mentioned in beforehand, where I always ask, do you have any questions? And somebody said about mind and body as two parts, but they're the same system. And I love this. We often get a physical reaction to the dialogue between our inner parts. And if it's a warmth, a pleasant sensation when two parts reach some kind of agreement, it's lovely, just like you would if it was you agreeing with a friend, for example. If you've fallen out and then you make up again, you get that lovely warm feeling. So there often is a physical response, just like there can be an unpleasant physical response when two of your parts are in conflict. We talk about things like, I made myself sick with worry over this decision. That's mind-body connection. But then when the decision is resolved, I felt a flood of relief coming over me. Yeah, that's lovely. Oh, I'm glad you felt your parts integrating there, Brian. Maria, what did you take away from our session?
Yeah, well, in terms of, I found it very, very useful in terms of sort of walking it through and applying it to a certain scenario at the moment in terms of the work that I'm doing. And in terms of how one of my parts can be very positive in a certain scenario, but in another scenario, if that's my driver part, but in another scenario, if people aren't up to speed with the driver and need a bit more time, that it actually sort of splinters and creates a bit of devastation, really. And then so it sort of really helps sort of put a context in terms of some of the things that are happening for me in myself, and in terms of the parts that I feel, but also in the parts of other people that I'm that are potentially maybe pressing buttons on. So we had a really good sort of discussion on that. Yeah, it's very relevant.
One of the things I took away that I really enjoyed talking to Maria, and as she said, the driver part of her is fine when everyone else is driving at the same speed, but it can be a problem if other people aren't up to speed yet. And it was lovely. She spontaneously identified another part of her that she called reflective, that tunes in when that's happening and pulls driver kind of just says calm down a bit, slow down a bit, and that can be good both for Maria herself and for the people around her. And I thought that was a lovely example of parts kind of supporting each other, helping each other out. Parts don't, we often talk about parts conflict, but they aren't inevitably in conflict. They're often absolutely in agreement. You know, everything's perfectly aligned, integrated and whole. It's just different facets of you coming into play. And I loved that example Maria used, where driver and reflective parts complement each other. Perfect. Is there anything else that you enjoyed, or any questions that any of you had before I move on tonight?
No, that was good. That was good.
Good. Okay. I mentioned earlier that the hidden parts, the shadow side of you, is one of the things that I'm going to be looking at within Bite-Size NLP, or the Success with Bite-Size NLP, which is a new monthly membership circle I'm launching from October. So if you would just give me a couple of minutes, I would love to just tell you a little bit about that and to invite you to join in with it. So I've been running a few free Bite-Size NLP group coaching sessions, and they've been going very well. They do get a lot of value for the people who've participated, and they do obviously take time to produce. And so I was trying to think of a way of doing something that I know people want. And the reason I know people want it is because it's what I want. And that is support from like-minded people who are trying to apply NLP in their own lives in a really practical way. And that's why I've put together this monthly, it's really a group coaching circle. So I'll coach anybody who joins. Once a month there'll be a live group coaching, obviously with recordings as well, but throughout the month there'll be a private Facebook group for interaction, support with other members of the circle, various additional self-development resources. I think I'm quite famous now for the worksheets that people can use, even whatever level of NLP they have, additional videos from me, the opportunity to talk to me as well, which again I know is something people often want, and it is hard to get one-to-one time with me. Obviously my coaching diary is pretty full, but this is going to be one way I will always give members of of this group priority for just, you know, little bits of extra support. And the idea is, you know, I think all of us like to set our goals for the year ahead or the quarter ahead, but there's a bit about tracking progress, there's a bit about using NLP to help us. Quite often in our daily lives we forget this amazing resource that we've learnt, and we forget to apply it. And so I sort of see myself being a bit of a reminder, like, here's something that will help you this month, here's something that will focus you. And it's all about self-development. So things like understanding your own shadows, your own blockers, your own bad habits, coming to terms with those, acknowledging, accepting, healing anything that needs you know, healing, and really boosting your mindset and your motivation using NLP in all the different ways. So that's kind of the purpose behind it. This is on the screen what I'm offering. It is going to be only for people who have got at least some level of existing NLP knowledge, whether that's having already done an introductory course or a diploma, all the way up to practitioners and master practitioners. So it is people who have got some NLP knowledge, and the requirement is that you want to actually apply NLP in your life. So that's basically what it is. I hope that sounds interesting. It's going to be on a monthly membership basis, and as well as if you do join as a member and you pay for your month, you'll get everything on here, but you'll also automatically get that month's grapevine. I'll carry on running the grapevine as well in its current form, but if you join the Success with Bite-Size NLP club, you'll get the grapevine included in that. The membership is going to be £30 a month, which, given that you're already paying £15 a month for Grapevine, but you're getting all of this extra on top of that. I think it's an absolute bargain. That is a special price for founder members only, so I don't promise to keep it that price forever. It's literally just opening. So far I've been running everything for free, but the club opens from the 1st of October at that price. I'm going to keep that price to the end of the year. After that I will review it. So I just wanted to talk about that because it's something I'm really excited about. I've loved the feedback I've had so far, all the preparation I've done. People have enjoyed it. The monthly group coaching is a morning. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a morning call if you join it in live. And that seemed to work really well. The people who've jumped on the ones I've done already, they went away saying, oh, I feel really set up for the day. You know, it's always going to be on the second Tuesday of the month. So with that, plus the Grapevine on the last Thursday, I think it sort of tops and tails the month really nicely and just gives that extra impetus. So it's something I'm really excited about. I hope you find it interesting as well. In your learning portal where you found this video or where you're watching the watching the replay, if you're watching this on replay, you'll find the link to the page that tells you all the details, everything I've just gone through, plus all the other information you might want, or you can ask me questions. All the information is in there, and also the button you can press if you do want to join in as well. I can't think of anything else I want to say about that, unless you've got any questions, those of you who are on the live call, if that sounds interesting to you.
Yeah, it does.
Good, perfect.
Yeah, I was just going to ask on the Facebook group.
Yes.
So is that going to be something that you're actively facilitate, Madeline, and sort of?
Yeah. So the private.
How's that going to work?
Yeah.
Because there has been a Facebook group up to now. So.
Yeah, I'll carry it. So I have already got there's already a public Facebook group called Mindset Mentoring that's open to everybody. And I go in there at least a couple of times a week to answer questions there. But what I don't do in there is I don't coach people. I won't answer, you know, NLP, how do you do this question? Right. Or, you know, it's like, because it's a public thing and I would just end up not doing anything else if I did that. And there's a private group for people who have signed up to make that change in 30 days. The Mindset Makeover product, which is one of my paid for products. So you might be in that, Maria, because I think you've done Make That Change in 30 days in the past. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So in terms of this one,
this will be just for paid up members of the Success Club. So for as long as you pay your membership, you can be a member of the private Facebook group. And what that will be about is peer support. So just like any other Facebook group, discussion, anything that's on your mind, questions, but I will be going into this group not so much more often. I'll still go in probably twice a week, but I will be open to more depth. So answering kind of actual coaching questions or applying type question, that sort of thing, that are within the framework of the month's theme. So it's going to be a theme for each month, but that's going to be within the framework of that. But yeah, so I'll be offering a different level of support
so
inside here.
So there's a theme for the month, and people can post up a question or whatever, or somebody else might answer it, or you might answer it when you go in.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you mean by theme?
Well, so for example, the theme for October is going to be, I'm going to revisit the success factors question, which is the last free one that I did, which I think, Emma, did you come on that one? No.
I haven't done it yet.
But that's right. But you signed up for it, so you're going to do the replay, And so it's going to match the sort of seasonal flow that I use across a year. So every quarter, I revisit my big goals and my quarterly goals. So October is the beginning of a new quarter. So what I'll be doing is I'll be coaching around what are your current goals, what are your big goals, what are your immediate goals, what's stopping you, what are your blockers, what help do you need, what can you apply that will get you across, get you past that. So very much, really practical, really like what's going on in your life right now, but the theme will be for October, it'll be reviewing the quarter ahead, you know, big goals and the quarter. So come January, it'll be annual goals. Yeah. Then the theme for November will be kind of naturally what typically happens in a quarterly cycle for me, is that then I'll be looking at things like blockers. Now I'm putting stuff into practice this quarter. What are the blockers? You know, what's getting in the way? What are the beliefs that might need sorting? What motivation do I need to boost? That kind. So again, really practical. It'll depend what's going on in your life, but it'll be very applicable.
Okay, thank you.
Very much about coaching. It's different from Grapevine is about practicing an NLP technique, and you get a bit of coaching as a byproduct. But, for example, tonight was about let's learn about parts and practice parts, and you did get a bit of coaching as a byproduct. This group is about coaching first and foremost, but using NLP. It's not about learning NLP, it's about using what you know, but it's about
okay, that's good, thank you.
It's quite a different, quite complementary, and as I say, for a lot of people it's one of the best or only ways of getting direct access to my coaching, because my coaching diary is so packed. I don't really get a chance to do a lot to offer everybody who wants one-to-one. To get some one-to-one. It won't be exactly one-to-one, I get that. Brilliant. Okay.
And that one can be done by watching it after, because I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to be on Zoom at 8 in the morning. I can tell you that for free.
Absolutely. Yeah, just like the Grapevine, it will be live and it'll be recorded. So the recordings are usually available about 24 hours after. There's usually a little bit of editing I have to do, because I never ever publish any confidential or personal information in the recordings, so it does take a little bit of time to edit them, but yes, absolutely, if you sign up you'll get access not only to the current month but all previous recordings as well. So like October will be the first, but come January there'll be 4 lots of previous months. So even if you only signed up for 1 month, you'd still get all the previous recordings that you could watch in your own time. So it's going to be really good value for money for the founder members, without a doubt. It's going to be, well, for everybody, it's going to be really good value for money. Cool. Thank you very much for listening to that, and also it's great to hear your feedback and your questions. It's all helping me to tailor it and make sure it meets people's needs. So just bringing today to a close, a really relevant, I think, follow-on to parts. The theme for October's Grapevine is going to be about reconciling differences. I think that these past few really extraordinary months have thrown up such differences of opinion. People have been really polarized over issues like racism, sexism, the coronavirus pandemic. And we've seen people falling out with each other over things like the value of wearing a mask, whether people are entitled to financial support, the effectiveness of our politicians, decisions that get made. And in this world where fear and antagonism seems to have really increased over these differences, I thought it really important to spend a Grapevine, for the October Grapevine, exploring NLP's role in understanding differences and appreciating opposing points. It can be so easy to argue, to fear, to go to anger, but this is going to be about appreciating, valuing, respecting and loving those who have a completely opposing view to ourselves. So we're going to be exploring ways of replacing fear with tolerance, respect and love. We will not be answering any questions over whether or not masks should be compulsory, for example, or rights and wrongs of anything. We're not trying to resolve the difference itself. It's all about reconciling the relationships. So the theme is going to be about using NLP to help with healing and reconciliation. And I'm very, very excited because I will be sharing with you some first-hand material from people who were involved in the Northern Ireland peace process, including one of the facilitators of the Good Friday Agreement, which, given that we're in danger of that being broken right now, I think it's very relevant. But there, I'm going to be able to share with you the NLP story that helped facilitate the Good Friday Agreement all those years ago. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be very moving, very interesting, and very, very relevant. So I hope you'll be able to join me for the next NLP Grapevine.
Rearing its ugly head again at the moment, and that feeds totally into this.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right, Emma. It really does. So that's next week. Finally, love it if you consider joining Bite Size NLP as a founder member. That would be wonderful. And whether you do, or if you choose that it's not for you, that's fine too. Please do go into the learning portal, and there is a lesson segment in there called Please Leave a Review. It'd be lovely if you could leave a review for tonight and share what you've learned, what you've enjoyed, any topics that you might like for a future Grapevine. That would also always be really, really useful, or any suggestions for me how I can improve the Grapevine going forward. That would be valuable as well. Thank you very much indeed. It's been another fab evening, and I'll see you all again soon.
Thanks, Madeline. That's been good. Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.